Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Everybody Has a Story podcast with Jeff Seltzer. I am your host, Jeff Seltzer. A few months ago, I was a guest on the Major World Order podcast and had so much fun, I decided to give it a shot myself and use this as a creative outlet. So I spent the last 3 months or so researching how to do a podcast, which I'm sure I'll talk about in future pods. And after all that work, here we are. So I'm hopeful that by the time you hear this, we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, and my new YouTube channel. This podcast will have a guest each week where I try to learn more about them, their hobbies, interests, any stories they have to share, stuff like that. But before I introduce my first guest, I wanted to go over some housekeeping. So firstly, you can check us out on Instagram at Everybody Has a Story Pod, YouTube at Everybody Has a Story Pod, my personal Insta at Seltzer77. You can always email us at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail. Additionally, you can find anything you want probably at jeffseltzer.com. Beyond that, my DMs are open if you'd like to be a guest or have any feedback. So with that said, without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest for this week. We'd like to welcome Dana Runberg to the show. Dana, how are you doing?
I'm great, Jeff. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Happy to have you. So for those of you who don't know, Dana Runberg he's very much into celebrity autographs. He started off kind of doing it on his own and kind of, going to sightings, finding celebrities to the point where he is right now, where he has his own business, where he runs private signings. He has a business partner. There's a lot of really cool stuff. So I wanted to kind of take a time to get everyone to know Dana a little bit better, learn about his history, even learn about how the first time I virtually and in person met Dana, and kind of go through that. So Dana, do you want to give a little background on yourself?
Absolutely. I'm 36 right now, and I guess I think it's probably 30 years now since like my first autograph signing as a fan. Like back in the 90s, it was sporadic. I was a kid, so I was sort of like at the mercy of like wherever my parents took me, what we discovered. There wasn't like an internet, there wasn't a marked out, there wasn't a Facebook, so like finding out about things was challenging. And there'd be little like indie shows with like Jim Duggan and like 93, 94 that I went to, stuff like that got me started. That I guess I kind of caught the bug with that thing.
Awesome. And you grew up in Long Island, New York, is that right?
Yeah, Long Island, New York.
So were you going to shows and signings out there? Were you coming to Jersey and New York City? Kind of like what was your home at that point?
At that point, pretty much exclusively Long Island.
Nice.
Like the first memory I have of like meeting anyone famous was Jim Duggan at an indie show out all the way out of like the east end of Long Island. Like, knowing the history now, that was like right after when him and Chic got fired for the airport contraband, I guess, to put it kindly.
Of course.
And that's why he was, as a kid, I didn't know. Jim Duggan was on TV. All of a sudden, Jim Duggan's out in Greenport. I didn't really understand the drama behind it, but that was exciting. Jim Duggan's out. And you'd see Virgil. Virgil was out in those days. You'd see, I remember the Ultimate Warrior did a comic book signing like 5 minutes from my house back. What year was that? 96, I guess, when that comic book was out?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
sounds about right.
Around that WrestleMania return.
Yeah, I did 96. Anaheim.
All the crazy road trips and stuff, that wasn't even a thought when I was that age.
That's really cool. I mean, I'll say, just kind of going back to that time a little bit too. So, and again, it's probably a little bit after that, but the first time that I was aware of you was years ago. I found the marked out message board, right? I think it was a pro board or something like that.
Yes.
I was looking for information on like a local convention or signing or something like that. And I thought it was really, really cool in the fact that you can kind of see like-minded individuals who would, get celebrity pictures, celebrity autographs, and even more so than that, the stories of how they got the autographs and the pictures, right? So some people, and I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit, would go to conventions, right? You can go to a convention, as we'll talk about in a bit, where you can pay to get in, that you can pay per individual. Sometimes it's at a independent wrestling show, it could be on Broadway after a show, meeting somebody, all different types of celebrities and all different types of interests, which I thought was phenomenal. But the first time I think we interacted, just to be honest, if I can remember it, was I think it was 2013. I was looking for CM Punk access tickets for WrestleMania at the Meadowlands. I'd done a real quick Google search or something. I'm like, hey, is anybody else having Ticketmaster issues? Because much like every other on sale 10, 15 years ago, it was just a complete debacle. I think you were having similar issues as well, and either through your group or through something, we started interacting, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. It's not just me. It's having issues with Ticketmaster. Everybody is. So I thought that was neat. And then, to that point too, I've seen you a number of times at various shows throughout the years since then. Super excited to see kind of like how you've kind of evolved your personal brand, let's say your business from, initially it seemed like more as like for a PC, like personal collection of stuff, to now you're obviously, it looks like making money, working with some big names and kind of going from there.
Yeah, I mean, like Marked Out originally started, this was back in 2007. There was like each convention, Legends of the Ring, Turnbuckle with Jason Blaustein. That was my first like convention as like an adult. That was like the first like big show. And they would have their own like independent like message boards for themselves. And you would go on there and, it was censorship. Especially with Blaustein, if you would say something, which I can understand, he's running a business. If you would be that annoying fan that would be like, oh, why is back then it was a little, it was a little different, but why is so and so $25 for an autograph? They were, like whatever, they could censor it, they could take it down. If you wanted to discuss another show, they didn't want you like discussing some other competing convention on their platform, which I understand. So it was just like restrictive. Like if you were on one, it was just like there were too many forums that you really could talk about too little on. So then, I had the idea of creating Marked Out, which was sort of a place where you could discuss anything in one platform. You didn't have to go to multiple message boards to talk about every little thing. And, it also blossomed into, at one point we had the space called the Arena, where people would argue and they'd fight and they would air grievances. And we had, WWE Hall of Famer Sunny joined the board at one point. She was fighting in the arena because someone disparaged her in some way, and she was launching into them. We've had convention promoters fighting all night long, legit. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd read through, and you'd see 4 a.m., 4:05, 4:06. It was just like a whole string of just fights and insults and complaining and going back and forth. So we had a little bit of everything. We had information, we had stories and reports, we had fighting, and we tried to capture it all.
Yeah, it almost seems like it could become a full-time job at some point, unpaid, I guess, just kind of just being the police and saying, okay, guys, let's behave, let's be nice. Because, we know how internet trolls can be, right? One person says something and somebody kind of, goes a little bit bigger. Before you know it, who knows what's happening. So, but again, it was an amazing way of bringing like-minded people together. And this was, I think, as you mentioned in your podcast, like pre-social media, right? Like MySpace was a thing like 03, 04, 05, and Facebook kind of took off around then, but it wasn't at the level it is today. So I remember back in like the early 2000s, like message boards like were the place. It was almost like the early social media where people could kind of connect online, again, find similar interests, find places to go, things like that.
Yeah, the way the early the early board with social media now, it's just, it would never be the same. Like we had, and maybe I'm one of the only ones that has like fond memories of this, but like the original members will remember this. We would have a thing called like the photo op game, where let's say you would post it would be like head-to-heads, basically head-to-head matchups. Right. And you would say, okay, I'm going to post 5 photos. So let's say you posted like Greg Valentine, Tito Santana, like common people that you see all over the place. The other person would post the same 5 photos. It would the same person, right, and no one would get a point. It wasn't like anything.
It's a fun game though.
Yeah, but if you had if you had The Rock, or you had, random, nurse from 1997's Raw episode, and just like the most obscure, if you would have like a celebrity that was in some wrestling angle, like if you would have had Donald Trump or Steve-O or something like that, would be like, who's going to match that? And like now you just go on Facebook, you would be able to search, you'd see who had what. But back then there was no social media. So you really didn't know at that point what so-and-so had. We weren't as connected. So it was like genuinely like, it was fun. It was a competition. It was a game. It was enjoyable. And like now with social media, we know too much about each other. It wouldn't work.
So true. But I mean, I'd say, while message boards really have kind of gone away for the most part, although Marked Out Collectibles or Marked Out still has a message board, like Facebook groups seem to have replaced that, right? So for example, we're both in the Major Pod Facebook group, which is a great way of, like-minded ideas, like-minded people, sharing information, finding buyers for things, just sharing experiences, pictures, and stuff like that. So it's evolved, but it's become a little more personal, I think. But also the nice thing about it too is it's probably less trolling because everyone's got a Facebook name and face attached to it as well, right? So you can't just go and create 17 Facebook burner accounts, go into the Facebook group for the most part, and just start stirring trouble up. Like there's a little more of a face behind the message.
Oh yeah, it's definitely it's not as easy to really be anonymous, but that was also at the same time that was like the beautiful thing about Marked Out. Like there was like the biggest trolls would put their face front and center. They didn't care. And you would see, like, you would go to a convention and you would see like everybody. Like you would see the people that were just arguing, 3 days ago, and there they are together on a line, and they're not talking to each other. But of course, they're not confronting each other either in most cases, because it's a lot easier to be tough on a computer. But it was always like a community. Like my username was Woodmo. And still to this day, I will have people coming up to me and saying, "Oh, you're Woodmo." It's a little less now with Facebook. Now my name is kind of like my identity. But I remember your username had your last name in it. So you were who you were. You didn't have like, you weren't like a, Twinkle Princess 14. Like
that's my burner account, by the way. So let's not tell anybody that one.
Yeah, so you picked like your name. So I went through life being called Woodmo at all these events. When I made that username, I didn't think I never would have imagined that I'd be like recognized in person and referred to as that. But I mean, I never minded it, but like I didn't really expect that when I did it.
Yeah, to that point, I mean, like by the time this stuff became a thing, like I'm 10 years older than you. I'm 46. So I think the fact that I got into this like in my, early to mid 20s, let's say, probably changed a little bit. Like if I was a kid, like I was like 12, 13, 14 years old, maybe I would have said, your mom's a jerk, whatever. And that would have been kind of my username. But I was kind of like, you know what? I'm an adult. Like, what am I going to do? Start picking on like kids or start fighting with, trolls or whatever. So I was like, this is me. I'm Seltzer 77, whatever. It is what it is. It's all branding. It's all personal preference. But, whatever we're comfortable with, right?
Yeah, absolutely right.
Cool. To that point, I know you had mentioned, a couple of names in there, The Rock and whoever else like that. Can you take us through a couple of like really cool celebrity stories that you have from back in the day when you used to go celebrity searching? Like I know I heard your pod recently, like your Harrison Ford story. There's a bunch of them, and I'm sure there's hundreds of them based on all the things that you've done.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Like now, I mean, I guess there probably always was like an ethical like fork in the road there about like meeting celebrities and wrestlers like sort of off the clock. Back then, I really was completely unaware that like there were people out there that thought like negatively of it. So like we were doing all sorts of things. One that was entertaining, and to tie it into The Rock, we thought we were wrong, but we thought we had the hotel Rock was staying at when he was in town for Saturday Night Live. So we showed up early in the morning. We had Marked Out original Class 316 who drove up with some random woman that he left sleeping in the car. He just left her sleeping in the car as if he was like some bad like dog owner. He just left her in the car with the window cracked for the whole time. And we're waiting and we're waiting and we're waiting and like we're not seeing them. And if you've done SNL enough, like you sort of knew the call times and rehearsals and everything else. So we're standing there and just completely like hours. I mean, you would spend 5, 6, 7 hours sometimes just waiting. That was like that was the game. It was like hunting, which doesn't make the whole thing sound less creepy. It probably makes it sound a lot more creepy, but that was the concept. You're waiting. I guess bird watching would probably be a little better. But anyway, so we're waiting, and this like person comes out like next to the hotel, which I guess I could say it now. It was the Mandarin, right? Right in Columbus Circle. There was a gym next door, the Equinox. So this person walks out of the gym, sees us standing out on the street like a bunch of mutants, holding all sorts of stuff for The Rock. And the guy's like, "Oh, you're waiting for The Rock? He's working out in the gym." So turned out we had the wrong hotel, but instead of being next door to the right gym, which, I mean, what are the odds?
Of course.
So we, of course, migrate over like mutants, dragging our stuff. We had, whatever, we had our bags and whatever. And he popped out. This was like, I guess, March. It was kind of cold. He's, fully like, Rock, a Marked Out term, Rock suited. He has the tank top on. He's got the Brahma Bull tattoo, wasn't covered up at the time. He's sweaty, and he's nice enough to stand out there in kind of the cold weather and take pictures. Of course, Class 316 like chased him to the SUV, shoved a magazine inside the window, and got him to sign the magazine. And Class was overjoyed. He's hugging the hotel bellhops, shaking hands with the bellhops. It's rejoicing. They are looking at him like he's completely like psychotic, which he is kind of. And yeah, I mean, like something like that, completely insane. And I'm sure there's people out there that will hear this story and say, you know, creepy stalker, you know, crossing lines, and you know, sure, whatever. But I mean, The Rock's not on the list right now for Fanatics Fest. If I didn't do that, I missed the era when Rock was doing like signings with Polaroids. It is what it is. I have no shame, no regret. It is what it is. At this point in my life, I don't really do it anymore because I don't have time to spend 6-7 hours and come home like empty-handed. I think I would want to like just hurl my body in front of the first train I saw. Like that would just be miserable.
So you were waiting, or you invested like 6 or 7 hours into that hopeful picture or autograph, right?
I actually didn't get an autograph because he was running late. He explained his predicament. I never had the chops, I guess, to be like a true elite street grapher. Because like to be a true elite street grapher, you have to have zero shame.
Sure.
Like, you are willing to beg, to grovel, to follow, to pester, to do whatever. Sometimes they would break into tears, maybe naturally, maybe they were just good actors. I mean, they may have been better actors than the actor they were trying to get. And they would do anything it took. When Rock explained that he was running late, he was kind enough to take the photo. I was happy with that. I wasn't going to push my luck. Class 316, on the other hand, will never stop until he succeeds or it's just the window is closed completely.
Which 25 years later, I mean, to your point from before, The Rock doesn't do signings or conventions. So super fortunate to get that. Like for me personally, I started getting pictures of celebrity/wrestlers in the late 90s back in, as you said, the Polaroid era, where basically you go to a signing or a convention, you pay them, I don't know, 15, 20 bucks, whatever it was. They take a Polaroid. You would hope it would come out well. Sometimes they would sign the Polaroid for an extra $5 or $10, and that was it. Like The Rock. So I grew up in Edison. I went to school at Rutgers in New Brunswick, which was right over there. And there were a couple of wrestling locations, like signings and stores, like in the New Brunswick, North Brunswick area. So I think I mentioned to you a while back that I used to go to the Route 18 flea market in North Brunswick. They used to, or was it East Brunswick? They used to have, like, when ECW would have a show at the arena in Philly, they would have somebody different there. So I met like Rob Van Dam there, got a great Polaroid with him and Bill Alfonso, ECW wrestlers, Axel Rotten, Sonny, as you mentioned before. But then there was also a store that opened up in North Brunswick, right by where the Regal Cinemas are right now on Route 1. And like once a month when the WWF at the time would be in the Meadowlands in East Rutherford, New Jersey, they would bring somebody in. So I was fortunate enough to get a Polaroid with The Rock back then. They brought in Jeff Jarrett. They brought in, who else did they bring in? The Hardy Boys, Edge, lots of, big names for like 98 or 99. Same for, let's say, Freehold Mall. Like there was an infamous one with Triple H and Chyna back in like 98, 99, where I got a picture with them. Obviously, Chyna's gone at this point, so it's impossible to get a picture with her. But I have like an autographed 8x10 for both of them. Funny thing was, they'd also usually offer like for an extra $10, like an autographed 8x10, which I've always been a personalized autograph guy. So when it came to that, which obviously changes what you're going to use it for, right? A lot of people nowadays will get just kind of the generic or random like inscription or name, an autograph, whatever else like that. But then obviously that makes it easier to resell, right? I don't think there's a whole lot of people out there named Jeff who are like, hey, I'd like, a whole collection of autographed pictures with Jeff's name on it. So, it was a choice that I made when I was, I guess, a teenager, early 20s, whatever. At this point in life, I'm like, you know what? For the most part, for me, it generally represents a moment in time. I'm okay with it being to Jeff. I think it's cooler, like when I hang it up as to Jeff, it shows, a situation or experience that I had. Additionally, one thing to add as well, I used to go to ECW wrestling shows in Philadelphia in the late 90s as well. Probably the greatest shows I ever went to. It was amazing. So like everybody. I would drive from Edison or New Brunswick to Philadelphia and then come back. Like clockwork, almost every show after the show was over, I would stop at the Roy Rogers on the Jersey Turnpike, like exit 4. And almost every time somebody would be there. So like I ran into Taz there. I ran into like Candido, Chris Candido and Sonny once. I ran into Bam Bam Bigelow and Chris Candido once. If that was the era of like smartphones, like I would have so many like better pictures.
Yeah.
Because back then I would take a disposable camera with me. I'd get a bunch of like, say, crappy pictures at the show, hope for the best or whatever, versus like the amount of selfies I could have gotten with like legends that many of them aren't here anymore would have been insane. But I mean, grew up in the wrong era. So here we are,
Absolutely. The technology has changed completely. I forget who I was even talking about this with, but like, I think the era of like finding like a cocktail napkin signed by, George Clooney is over, because
Yep.
no one's going to reach in their pocket and pull out some piece of crap to get signed when they have a phone. They're going to get the selfie. They're going to get a picture of him like a creep. They're going to do something that's more technologically advanced than just like finding some random object and getting it signed.
Yeah, in your latest podcast, I think you told that story, which is a great story. I mean, I'd say for me, the same thing too, in the fact that for me, like years ago, like you would get whatever signed you could, but for me, like I'm more about like the picture. Like I have a collection of a ridiculous amount of pictures with wrestlers and celebrities that I have access to at all times. Like the thing that I would say I do the most nowadays, that's closest to that, is oftentimes if I meet a wrestler, I'll get a picture with them. And then if I'm going to meet them again, I'll get an 8x10 of that picture I took with them the last time and get them to sign that picture. Because for me, this way I have both the experience of a picture with them and then I can get the signature of it. Because to your point, an autographed napkin or whatever else like that really does nothing for me, but to have a really cool like 8x10, like I have one with AJ Styles, professional wrestler in WWE, a picture I got with him in 2006. Then when I met him at a convention, like 8 or 9 years later, I got him to sign that picture. A, it's a cool picture signed. And B, it makes for a great conversation piece where right off the bat, it breaks through the ice, right? They're like,
Absolutely.
oh, when was that picture from? And you can have a nice little conversation about like, oh, is it the ECW arena? Is it before a TNA show? Or whatever it was, right? It kind of helps make it less awkward.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, I used to be strictly a photo op guy. And like the autographs I would get would be like super ticket autographs that they were included. A super ticket, if you're not aware, was like a $200 like all inclusive like ticket where the promoter would book 10 to 12 people, and that ticket got you an autograph and a photo op with everyone on that lineup. So I was usually the guy that this story I remember telling on the podcast. I was always the guy with the encyclopedia or some stupid 8x10 that I just found on eBay or whatever. And then I would be sitting next to my friend Lanza, who would have like the mock Hasbros and all this really cool stuff. And like looking back now, I'm like, damn, like I was watching Dusty sign a Hasbro that it wasn't even that much at that point in the eBay days. 15, 20 years ago, it was a lot cheaper.
Yep.
And I have an 8x10, which I like. I'm still, I'm glad I have it, but I wish I had chosen my items a little bit better back then.
Yeah, great call out. I mean, I'll say the same thing too, that I used to go to when they had the Legends of the Ring. I guess it was the wrestling conventions. Their super tickets were ridiculous. I mean, this was pre-COVID. Things have changed, and they've changed a lot in the convention circuit since then. But to your point, for $200, you would get like a picture and autograph with like 10 or 15 wrestlers. Versus nowadays, a lot of prices have, let's say, right-sized. And so it's a very different situation where $200 might get me 2 or 3 wrestlers nowadays. So I would imagine these conventions, they can't afford to do a super ticket anymore unless they charge you $1,000. And very few people are going in with that kind of money for that many wrestlers.
Yeah, you're either paying $1,000 or you're meeting Jeff Ludlow, who cuts meat by day at the local deli, and he's working at night as a wrestler. Like he might be the future star, but it's not quite as appealing as when you have a super ticket lineup. Like Legends of the Ring knocked it out of the park every single time. I think my all-time favorite super ticket lineup though was Sinomania, maybe 3. I'm not sure about the number, but you had Bret Hart, Dusty Rhodes, the Dudley Boys. I'm trying to think who else was on that lineup, but it was stacked. It was completely stacked, and that was $200. It's like,
what a bargain. Yeah. Like I love the super tickets also at those conventions because you can get like some really random or weird combinations. So there was one year, I remember they had Billy Gunn, Bart Gunn, and the Road Dogg. So you have multiple combinations of old WWF tag teams. So I was able to get a picture with each guy, and then I got a picture with the New Age Outlaws, and then I got a picture with the Smoking Guns. Right? Trying to get a picture with Billy and Bart Gunn together nowadays it's not going to happen. Like Bart Gunn, I don't believe does conventions anymore, and Billy Gunn is super pricey at this point. So to your point, for like $250, I got those combinations. Plus, they would throw in usually a couple other names. I think the Conquistadors one year Scott Hall I met that way, Pat Patterson. So even a lot of legends that aren't with us anymore. It was just an awesome experience and a way to just kind of like, add to the collection, which was awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, you even could have gotten the most rare of all groups, which would have been the Bart Gunn Road Dog group. I don't think anyone's got that one. But yeah, the super ticket lineups like Legends of the Ring, which they were always the absolute best at like unearthing like these obscure people.
Yes.
And not to get super deep into like the nuts and the bolts of it, but they brought in Dennis Stamp, that guy that jumped on the trampoline and the
Beyond the Mat.
Yes. The mat. If you would have, I mean, if you like, granted back then flights and everything were cheaper, but if you try to like fly in a guy like that today and pay their fee, you're not making any money on that. There's a couple like super deep wrestling nerds, like myself, that would actually say, "Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to pay the $20." But the average fan is not there. They were there to meet, Ric Flair or Sting or whoever else was there, the big names. So you probably wouldn't make any money. You'd probably take, whatever size bath his fee would command. But with a super ticket, it's factored into the super ticket. So even if the fan was there to meet Tito Santana and, Scott Hall, well, guess what? Their $200 is funding Dennis Stamp.
Yep.
Dennis Stamp then works. There were a lot of those names that I think we probably never would have seen without really a super ticket model.
Yeah, absolutely. Which leads me into your podcast that you and your business partner Sean recently launched. So take a look on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify for Marked Out Radio. As of right now, they've had 2 episodes out. By the time this drops, might be a 3rd episode. For me, I've been mesmerized. So getting a little bit into the weeds a little bit, and the fact that for me, I am a data geek. Like, I love numbers. They go super into detail about how conventions run, celebrity signings, things like that, into like the P&L, the finances, why they do things, why they don't do things, how they make money, how certain conventions maybe don't make money, even talking about conventions that aren't around anymore because of, let's say, less than stellar business practices. It's been awesome. It's been a great listen so far. So Dana, keep up the good work on that. If there's anything else you want to talk about your podcast, please feel free.
Thank you. Yes. I will give all credit to my business partner, Sean, on that. He has wanted to do one for a couple of months, and I was dragging my feet. I really didn't have a tremendous desire to do it. And then finally, because I'm a teacher, so before my summer school began, I'm like, all right, finally, Sean, let's just do it, because he was on summer vacation. He is also a teacher. He doesn't work summer school, so he's got the whole summer. I'm like, all right, let's do one episode. Let's see how it goes. We did the episode. We ended the episode. And my first words to him were, "That didn't suck."
Way to sell it.
It didn't suck. I enjoyed doing it. I'm blown away by everyone that's enjoying it. He was right. I was not really thinking there was that much of a platform for this. But it's fun. There's a lot to talk about. We're just scraping the surface. We have a guest lined up. I'm not going to reveal it yet. I want it to be a surprise, but we have a guest lined up for our 4th episode. And we actually, there are a number of guests that we were spitballing that we'd want to have. And there was one guy that we're like, oh, we don't know, who knows if he'd want to do it. He actually reached out to me the other day and was like, I love the podcast. I'd love to be on. So we're going to try to hammer that down for, a couple episodes after this. We don't want to do guest after guest because, it's, with Sean and I, we have enough stories. We talk too much as it is. If we have a guest on every week, it'll be, too much. But We're going to, mix some guests in. We also have, for people that know the original Marked Out, maybe, even if you don't, we have some legendary characters. We have Class 316. We have Captain Kangaroo. We got Mr. Ira. We have a lot of people that are just completely, unique characters. And we're going to get them in. We're going to mix them in. We're going to have some stories. It's going to be good.
Which is fantastic. I mean, it shows, obviously, all of your and Sean's years of experience in the business in terms of how it's evolved. But additionally, it's a great platform for you guys to promote your the business that you guys run, which is obviously Marked Out Collectibles. So for those of you that are watching this on YouTube, I'm going to share and show you what the website looks like. Do you want to talk a little bit about your business, upcoming signings, stuff like that?
Absolutely. We have, as you can see on the upcoming, this is markedoutcollectibles.com. We also have an eBay page, marked-out-collectibles on eBay, which is also linked on here. If you go on this homepage, markedoutcollectibles.com, you'll find all that. And we do a lot of business on eBay. We also have a Facebook group, Marked Out Collectibles Official Marketplace, where you get the absolute best deals on there, because since we are a business podcast, I can sort of peel back the layers. Facebook has less fees. There's PayPal. There's different ways to receive payment. We can circumvent some of the fees and give you so if you see a price on our website or on eBay, reach me on Facebook. I can usually do a little better than that. But the website is always our place for our upcoming signings. We have the Garcia twins this weekend. If you didn't place an order, you probably got shut out. I'm not going to be able to safely print for that. So I'm going to be pulling that off probably later today. So when you watch this, that will be gone. So you missed out if you didn't already do it. Those are, they were formerly known as the Bella twins. They do not make many appearances. So we're very excited. Thanks to our friends at Puppet Master Promotions and the big event. Then we have Melissa Barrera from Scream 5 and 6. If you are a horror fan, you don't want to miss this. She is the star of those two new movies. And we have a private signing in partnership with Golden Ring Collectibles. That is a major mark, friend of the show, Brian Sokol. We do a lot of business with Brian. He's one of my best friends. So we are involved with that. Items due 8/1. You can mail stuff in. We also have a lot of prints up for order on our website. Then we have Paul Heyman, who is due 11/7. That's a little far into the future. But Paul Heyman, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul Heyman does not do appearances.
That's right. I think the last one I can remember was he did one in an East Rutherford convention back in 1998, I want to say. And then this is probably the next one. He did a mail-in, I think, for High Spots maybe about 6 months ago. But in terms of person or in terms of, whatever, that's 3 in 25 years. So he's a very rare guy to get.
Yeah, the second that was announced, I texted Tom Unger, and he's a magician. I texted him that. I'm like, I can't believe you always, every show, he pulls someone out that you never expected to see. Stacy Keebler, the show before, now Paul Heyman. So we are extremely excited to be working on this little private opportunity, courtesy of a big event. We have some, honestly, because we've worked with a lot of ECW originals, as you see up top. Sandman and Mikey. Working with Hack was an episode all in of itself. Hack is an experience. But we have we did a bunch of multi-signed ECW prints, and we're trying to give people the cheapest possible options. We have logo sheets that would be signed by Paul, RVD, Sandman, Mikey, it's just a ton of people. And I think it's $100 we're asking for. We have these are not going to last long. And then the last one we have scheduled right now is Joe Hendry, who, if you've been watching wrestling, if you have a social media account, that guy is everywhere, to the point I was actually a little nervous that maybe WWE is going to need him that day. It seems like he's put pen to paper already, but it sounds like it's still going on. Jerry Sorrentino is running it over at the Wrestling Universe, and we have some awesome metallic options. So, don't wait on Joe Hendry. I don't expect you're going to see him make another run. He might be a Fanatics Fest next year, but you can get a metallic right now for $35 through us. Or if you're in New York, go to the Wrestling Universe and meet him through Jerry. You're not going to see him cheaper than this. I guarantee it.
Yeah, Joe's on the cusp of. He's broken out. He's been a viral sensation or whatever. But he's at the point now where he's not charging what he could yet. To your point, a year from now he's going to be triple the price. So, definitely the one to get now if you can.
And let me just say, I was in contact with Joe last year.
Yes.
He's triple the price already.
I'm sure.
So, from what he is this year, I'm sure that's going to go up. Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Yep. So lots of great things coming up from Dana and Marked Out Collectibles and your business partner, Sean. Lots of really cool stuff going on. One thing I just wanted to kind of close with or kind of get to before moving on was in the podcast, you're talking about investments, right? In terms of going after various signings of people, let's say, who are on the way up, on the way down, and people who never make it anywhere. So I would say, you guys have been doing this for a few years now. It's very interesting to see who you have from a signing perspective, right? So Obviously, in the next couple of months, you have the Bella twins, huge. Melissa Barrera, huge from the two Scream movies. Paul Heyman, Joe Hendry. In the last 6 months, you had Matt Riddle. You've had a number of other people, which obviously proven names and such. But it's always interesting to see like some of the up and comers. So one I'm going to kind of mention that I thought was really cool that you did a signing of about a year and a half ago, and then I met them both at a different convention a few months later. Was like Encore and Tiara James. Both of them, I think, were eventual House of Glory wrestlers, and a buddy of mine wrestles for House of Glory. So I've seen Encore multiple times. Really great stuff. But it's very interesting to see what they're doing. I think Tiara James has done some AEW and some either NXT or like Raw, like extra work and such like that too. But it's a case of, as you mentioned, get them in for a signing before they get to be too expensive, like a Joe Hendry. Get them to sign a whole bunch of 8x10s. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't, right? Sometimes they blow up and then you can, sell them for a significant amount of money down the line. Sometimes they're just kind of sitting in your closet and you're hopeful that, you can get something for them at some point. So, but it's much like any other gamble or investment, right? Not every investment's going to hit, but sometimes, if you're the right place, the right time, or you see somebody on their way up, it totally pays out. Like a Joe Hendry, right? Joe Hendry, as you said, will probably be much bigger, much more expensive a year from now. So as part of the private signing, I'm sure, you guys work through getting additional 8x10s that you'll probably sit on for now. And then a year from now, you can probably make, triple, quadruple your money at that point, which is great.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's always, I'm not a gambler. I don't do the parlays. I'm a sports guy, but I'm not doing any of that. But these are my gambles. I enjoy these. Tiara and Encore are great. We've, enjoyed working with them. Encore is doing a great job now. He's built he has this whole fitness company.
I saw he's got 35,000 followers on Instagram. Yeah. I saw this a few days ago. Encore, I was looking at it. I was like, wow, he's blown up. He's good.
Yeah, Encore knows how to work the Instagram algorithms. He's
super entertaining too. Remember about a year and a half ago when I first saw him, I think through you, his intro or his dance routine that he was doing in the ring totally went viral. It was great. He just got a lot more fans that way, which was insane. I mean, he seems like a great guy in the time that I met him, but he's also super entertaining and, he's still young. So the sky's the limit for him, I think.
Absolutely. And Tiara is always doing great stuff. She's always on the road. And, another one, we recently had Diamond Virago out, who was trained by the Amazing Red. She's another House of Glory name. She's honestly brand new. We reached out to her and she told us I think I'm too new to do one. I don't think it's a good look as a new talent to be doing this. And then we kept in touch and that's an investment right there.
Yes.
I think she's going to pan out big time. Then Billy Starks, we worked with her on the first time before she signed.
At GCW, I think you did, right? A year ago or so? Yeah.
Yeah. And then we worked with her again recently while she's on ROH and in AEW. And, she's just a great kid. Talking to her, I was talking to her when she was still in high school, that first signing. She was still in high school, and Sean and I are teachers. So it was just marveling at the idea that she finished her homework and now she's 4 states over, doing this show, doing business with us, going just complete, she had a camera crew in check. I'm you should be making a movie about this. And she already was working on a docu-series. She's just awesome. And now, you text her to do more business. She's the same as she ever was. She's awesome. So yeah, I mean, that's one of my favorite parts of all this, just working with the up and comers. And just to give you a little tease of something we're working on coming up, we may or may not be with a likely future Bloodline member.
Nice.
Couple of weeks. So definitely watch the page for that. There will be no pre-orders, but we should have a nice little merch drop coming soon.
Very cool. Well, I might see this potential Bloodline member in Asbury Park on August 4th. So we'll see if it's the same person I'm thinking about right now.
Might be.
Awesome. One more story actually I just thought about right now. So a few weeks ago, I think on either the Facebook group or something, you were talking about street date on figures, action figures. So for those that don't know, similar to how for years and years, movies and CDs and DVDs and such like that, the studios would send to the stores, but they couldn't sell it to a certain date, right? So for example, years ago, I worked with Sam Goody. Here's an interesting story. Worked at a Sam Goody, and I think we had a Disney, Toy Story 1 VHS or something like that. We received it to the back of the store, but we couldn't actually put it on the floor until, a certain Friday because new releases were on Fridays back then. funny thing was I worked at Sam Goody that summer, but I also worked at a CVS in the same mall at the same time. So CVS doesn't care about breaking street date. Like at the time, they just didn't. They just put it out there. So I would have my boss at Sam Goody yelling at me saying like, hey, Jeff, go tell your boss at CVS to stop putting the VHS out on the floor early. And it's just insane to me, just kind of this situation I was put in, making $5 an hour minimum wage. And basically I was the in-between between two different mall stores fighting over who was going to put their VHSs out earlier. Same thing happens with action figures nowadays. I think you were mentioning like at Target specifically. There's a whole series of WWE figures that just came out that what happens is a lot of times the store will just put stuff out on the floor to sell. But then when customers would take it to the register, the cashier would say, oh, we can't sell it yet because an alert would come out on the register. It's amazing to me that 30 years later, this is still a thing.
Yeah.
That it's street date, whatever else like that. It's not as soon as it goes out there, it can sell. Like there were specific dates that these stores can get a lot of trouble if they're caught selling early.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is I think Target and Mattel should sort of realize how many of those Legends figures they're selling full price, which is not very many. And they should be happy that someone's trying to pay full price. I mean, those things hit clearance quick.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, I mean, I don't blame the workers, but it's kind of like if you want to hold something in the back until the street date, I get it. But you put something out and then the person's trying to get it. And I mean, all it's really doing then is just tempting the person to grab one of the other figures and scan that instead. And that's not something anyone should be doing. And it's just, it's a messy situation that could have been avoided if you just would have held it in the back until the street date, if that's what the store, cares to do.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure the street dates years ago were because let's say technology wasn't what it is today. It was tougher from a supply chain perspective to get to the stores. They didn't want to give any store an unfair advantage, lean to one retailer versus the other. Also for like movies and such like that, I'm sure they wanted to make sure that like, if a movie or an album was going to be number one, the release week, they wanted to get everything during that 4 or 5 day period versus, if it kind of leaks out, it's tough to get that huge pop that first week. 30 years later, it's still an issue, which especially with the internet, it's amazing to me that it hasn't really been resolved yet because, if I can't buy it at Target, I mean, I've seen in groups, you could buy it somewhere else probably just as quickly because people find a way, weirdly. Yeah. So maybe at some point that'll get resolved, although after 30 years it hasn't. So maybe we're talking again in 2060. We'll have resolution to this. Who knows? It's
possible. But as you saw with those Walmart pallets, I think the street date was this past Sunday. And
yeah.
I went to far too many. I think that the thrill of the hunt is sometimes more fun than the actual need of like needing what you're looking for. Right. But I went to far too many Walmarts in my travels, and all but like 2 had them out well before that street date of like, I think it was 7/14. They were out like, days and days before that. So apparently Walmart doesn't really care. At least most of them don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, for let's say my real world job, I'll tell you what they want, they generally get. Like they are the biggest retailer out there. And if Mattel comes and says, hey, we're going to fine you, that retailer will pretty much say, that's fine. We won't sell your product anymore. And that's a huge, huge percentage of their sales. So they definitely carry a lot of power there. So
sure.
There was that. So with that said, I mean, we've gone through a lot. We've learned a lot about you, Dana, which has been great. Anything else you want to share or plug before we close out for today?
Basically, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's been a blast. And as far as like the plug, Jeff did such a great job. This is such a nice layout here. I was ready to plug the website and describe it. And, I'd like to think my words are good and I'm able to paint a nice picture. But, I mean, he had the damn site right on the screen. So, I mean, I can't do better than that. Just, markedoutcollectibles.com. Look, there it is again. Damn. It's a first-class operation. Markedoutcollectibles.com, the Marked Out Facebook group. We always have stuff going on from people we book and then things that we, vendors that we work with to get private opportunities. We're always working. We're always hustling to try to bring new stuff. So just check us out.
And just speaking out of experience, Dana, I'll say, like, I've worked with you guys in the past in terms of some of your signings, and you guys are top notch. Like, you're always come through, great stuff, high quality. And if there's ever an issue, you resolve it very quickly without any issues beyond that. So again, awesome business, guys. Can't say enough great things about you and your business partner, Sean, at Marked Out Collectibles. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Awesome. So with that said, guys, again, thank you all. This has been the first episode of Everybody Has a Story with Jeff Seltzer. Real quick, some more housekeeping here. I want to thank John Germain for his help with the graphics. Scott for some behind-the-scenes help. I'd like to thank the boys over at the Major World Order, Andrew, Billy, and Jake for inspiring me and giving me some pointers on this journey. Gina for encouraging me to do this. And thanks to Beth and the girls for putting up my nonsense as I get ready to launch this pod. Lots of really cool guests coming up the next few weeks. Lots of really great topics. This one was about collectibles and celebrities. We have others coming up too that I think will be interesting to a lot of people. If you want to be a guest or have any questions or pointers or whatever else like that, my DMs are open. Check out on Instagram at Everybody Has a Story Pod. Go to the YouTube channel, Everyone Has a Story Pod. You can email us directly at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com. JeffSeltzer.com is generally your home for everything Jeff Seltzer and this podcast. Thank you all so much for joining and hope to see you all next week. Have a great week, guys.